what if we could step outside ourselves and spectate in our reality? Better yet, what if we could step outside and travel anywhere? In this edition of Avatars of the Astral Worlds, we'll look at the possibility of astral projection and out-of-body experiences. Astral projection, also known as astral travel, is a term used in esotericism to describe an intentional out-of-body experience that assumes the existence of a subtle body called an astral body, through which consciousness can function separately from the physical body and travel throughout the astral plane. The idea of astral travel is ancient and occurs in multiple cultures. The modern terminology of astral projection was coined and promoted by 19th century theosophists. It is sometimes reported in association with dreams and forms of meditation. Some individuals have reported similar descriptions of astral projection induced by various hallucinogenic and hypnotic means, including self-hypnosis. There is no scientific evidence that there is a consciousness whose embodied functions are separate from regular neural activity, or that one can consciously leave the body and make observations of the physical universe. Astral projection has been characterized as a pseudoscience. Similar concepts of soul travel appear in various other religious traditions. For example, ancient Egyptian teachings present the soul as having the ability to hover outside the physical body via the ka, or subtle body. Judaic and Christian origins. Carrington, Muldoon, Peterson, and Williams claim that the subtle body is attached to the physical body using a psychic silver cord. The final chapter of the Book of Ecclesiastes is often cited in this respect. Before the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be shattered at the fountain, or the wheel be broken at the cistern. However, Sherman contends that the context points to this as merely a metaphor, comparing the body to a machine, with the silver cord referring to the spine. Paul's second epistle to the Corinthians generally refers to the astral planes. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I do not know, God knows. This statement gave rise to the Visio Pauli. This tract offers a vision of heaven and hell, a forerunner of visions attributed to Adomnan and T. Magdalus and Dante's Divine Comedy. Western esotericism. According to the classical, medieval, Renaissance Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and later Theosophist and Rosicrucian thought, the astral body is a medium-light body linking the rational soul to the physical body. In contrast, the astral plane is an intermediate world of light between heaven and earth, composed of the spheres of the planets and stars. Angels, demons, and spirits populated these astral spheres. In the Neoplatonism of Plotinus, for example, the individual is a microcosm or small world of the universe, and the macrocosm or great world. The rational soul is akin to the great soul of the world, while the material universe, like the body, is made as a faded image of the intelligible. Each succeeding plane of manifestation is causal to the next, a worldview known as emanationism. From the one proceeds intellect, from intellect soul, and from soul in its lower phase, or that of nature, the material universe. The idea of the astral figured prominently in the work of the 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, whence it was adopted and developed further by Theosophy and used afterward by other esoteric movements. The subtle bodies and their associated planes of existence form an essential part of some esoteric systems that deal with astral phenomena. Often these bodies and their planes of existence are depicted as a series of concentric circles or nested spheres, with a separate body traversing each realm. Hinduism. Similar ideas, such as the Linga Sarira, are found in ancient Hindu scriptures, such as the Yoga Vasistha Maharamayana of Valmiki. Modern Indians vouched for astral projection, including Paramahansa Yogananda, who witnessed Swami Pranabhananda doing a miracle through a possible astral projection. The Indian spiritual teacher Meher Baba described one's use of astral projection. In the advancing stages leading to the beginning of the path, the aspirant becomes spiritually prepared for being entrusted with free use of the forces of the inner world of the astral bodies. He may then undertake astral journeys in his astral body, leaving the physical body in sleep or wakefulness. The astral journeys that are taken unconsciously are much less important than those undertaken with full consciousness, and as a result of deliberate volition. This implies conscious use of the astral body. Conscious separation of the astral body from the outer vehicle of the gross body has its own value in making the soul feel its distinction from the gross body and in arriving at fuller control of the gross body. One can, at will, put on and take off the external gross body as if it were a cloak and use the astral body for experiencing the inner world of the astral and for undertaking journeys through it, if and when necessary. The ability to undertake astral journeys, therefore, involves considerable expansion of one's scope for experience. It brings opportunities for promoting one's own spiritual advancement, which begins with the involution of consciousness. Astral projection is one of the siddhis considered achievable by yoga practitioners through self-disciplined practice. In the epic The Mahabharata, Drona leaves his physical body to see if his son is alive. Taoist alchemical practice involves the creation of an energy body by breathing meditations, drawing energy into a pearl that is then circulated. Zhangzi, with a drum as his pillow, fell fast asleep, snoring and motionless. His primordial spirit, however, went straight into the banquet room and said, "My lords, here I am again." When Tuiji walked with the officials to take a look, there really was a Taoist sleeping on the ground and snoring like thunder. Yet inside, in the side room, there was another Taoist beating a fisher drum and singing Taoist songs. The officials all said, although there are two different people, their faces and clothes are exactly alike. He is a divine immortal who can simultaneously divide his body and appear in several places. At that moment, the Taoist in the side room came walking out, and the Taoist sleeping on the ground woke up. The two merged into one. Japanese mythology. In Japanese mythology, an ikurio, also read as shoryo, sere, or ikisudama, is a manifestation of the soul of a living person separately from their body. Traditionally, suppose someone holds a good grudge against another person. In that case, it is believed that a part of the whole of their soul can temporarily leave their body and appear before the target of their hate to curse or otherwise harm them, similar to an evil eye. Souls are also believed to leave a living body when the body is extremely sick or comatose. Such ikurio are not malevolent. Amerindian traditions. Amazon the Yaskomo of the Weiwei is believed to be able to perform a soul flight that can serve several functions, such as healing, flying to the sky to consult cosmological beings, the moon or the brother of the moon, to get a name for a newborn baby, flying to the cave of Peccaries Mountains to ask the father of Peccaries for an abundance of game, or flying deep down in a river to get the help of other beings. Inuit. In some Inuit groups, people with unique capabilities, known as Angdakuk, are said to travel to mythological or remote places and report their experiences and matters critical to their fellows, or the entire community that would be unavailable to people with standard capabilities, such as how to stop bad luck in hunting or cure a sick person. Where did the term astral projection originate? The expression astral projection came to be used in two different ways. For the Golden Dawn and some theosophists, it retained the classical and medieval philosophers' meaning of journeying to other worlds, heavens, hells, the astrological spheres, and different imaginal landscapes. Still, outside these circles, the term was increasingly applied to non-physical travel around the physical world. Though this usage continues to be widespread, the term etheric travel, used by some later theosophists, offers a helpful distinction. Some experiments say they visit different times and places. Etheric, then, is used to represent the sense of being out of the body in the physical world, whereas astral may connote some alteration in time perception. Robert Monroe describes the former type of projection as locale 1, or the here-now, involving people and places that exist. Robert Bruce calls it the real-time zone, and describes it as the non-physical dimension level closest to the physical. This etheric body is usually, though not always, invisible but is often perceived by the experient as connected to the physical body during separation by a silver cord. Some link falling dreams with projection. According to Max Heindel, the etheric double is a medium between the astral and physical realms. In his system, the ether, also called prana, is the vital force that empowers the physical forms to change. From his descriptions, it can be inferred that, to him, when one views the physical during an out-of-body experience, one is not technically in the astral realm. Other experiments may describe a domain that has no parallel to any known physical setting. Environments may be populated or unpopulated, artificial, natural, or abstract, and the experience may be joyful, horrific, or neutral. A common theosophical belief is that one may access a compendium of mystical knowledge called the Akashic Records. In many accounts, the experiencer correlates the astral world with the world of dreams. Some even report seeing other dreamers enacting dream scenarios, unaware of their wider environment. The astral environment may also be divided into levels or subplanes by theorists. Still, there are many different views in various traditions concerning the overall structure of the astral planes. They may include heavens and hells and other after-death spheres, transcendent environments, or other less easily characterized states. Notable practitioners. Emanuel Swedenborg was one of the first practitioners to write extensively about the out-of-body experience in his spiritual diary. French philosopher and novelist Honoré de Balzac's fictional work, Louis Lambert, suggests he may have had some astral or out-of-body experiences. There are many 20th century publications on astral projection, although only a few authors remain widely cited. These include Robert Monroe, Oliver Fox, Sylvan Muldoon, Hereward Carrington, and Aram. Robert Monroe's accounts of journeys to other realms popularized the term OBE and were translated into many languages. Though his books only placed secondary importance on descriptions of method, Monroe also founded an institute dedicated to research, exploration, and nonprofit dissemination of auditory technology for assisting others in achieving projection and related altered states of consciousness. Robert Bruce, William Bullman, Marilyn Hughes, and Albert Taylor have discussed their theories and findings on the syndicated show Coast to Coast AM several times. Michael Crichton gives lengthy and detailed explanations and experiences of astral projection in his nonfiction book travels. In her book, My Religion, Helen Keller tells of her beliefs in Swedenborgianism and how she once traveled to Athens. I have been far away all this time and haven't left the room. It was clear to me that it was because I was a spirit that I had so vividly seen and felt a place 1,000 miles away. Space was nothing to spirit. The soul's ability to leave the body at will or while sleeping and visit the various planes of heaven is also known as soul travel. The practice is taught in Surat Shabd Yoga, where the experience is achieved mainly through meditation techniques and mantra repetition. All Sant Mat gurus widely spoke about this kind of out-of-body experience, such as Kirpal Singh. Eckankar describes the soul travel broadly as the movement of the true, spiritual self closer to the heart of God. While the contemplative may perceive the experience as travel, the soul is said not to move, but to come into an agreement with fixed states and conditions that already exist in some world of time and space. American Harold Klemp, the current spiritual leader of Eckankar, practices and teaches soul travel, as did his predecessors, through contemplative techniques known as the spiritual exercises of E.C.K. Edgar Cayce from the U.S., was popularly known as the Sleeping Prophet. He had been practicing astral travel in Washington, D.C. for many years. In occult traditions, Practices range from inducing trance states to the mental construction of a second body, called the body of light in Aleister Crowley's writings, through visualization and controlled breathing, followed by the transfer of consciousness to the secondary body by a mental act of will. Scientific reception. There is no scientific evidence that astral projection is an objective phenomenon. Some patients have experiences suggestive of astral projection from brain stimulation treatments and hallucinogenic drugs, such as ketamine, phencyclidine, and DMT. Robert Todd Carroll writes that the primary evidence to support claims of astral travel is anecdotal and comes in the form of testimonials of those who claim to have experienced being out of their bodies when they may have been out of their minds. Subjects in parapsychological experiments have attempted to project their astral bodies to distant rooms and see what was happening. However, such experiments haven't produced precise results. According to Bob Bruce of the Queensland Skeptics Association, astral projection is just imagining or a dream state. Bruce writes that the existence of an astral plane is contrary to the limits of science. We know how many possibilities there are for dimensions, and we know what the dimensions do. None of it correlates with things like astral projection. Bruce attributes astral experiences, such as meetings, alleged by practitioners to confirmation bias and coincidences. Psychologist Donovan Rockcliffe has written that astral projection can be explained by delusion, hallucination, and vivid dreams. Arthur W. Wiggins, writing in Quantum Leaps in the Wrong Direction, Where Real Science Ends and Pseudoscience Begins, said that purported evidence of the ability to astral travel great distances and give descriptions of places visited is predominantly anecdotal. In 1978, Ingo Swann provided a test of his alleged ability to astral travel to Jupiter and observed details of the planet. Actual findings and information were later compared to Swann's claimed observations. According to an evaluation by James Randi, Swann's accuracy was unconvincing and unimpressive, with an overall score of 37%. Wiggins considers astral travel an illusion and looks to neuroanatomy, human belief, imagination, and prior knowledge to provide prosaic explanations for those claiming to experience it. This brings us to our next topic, out-of-body experiences. An out-of-body experience, or an OBE for short, is a phenomenon in which a person perceives the world from a location outside their physical body. An OBE is a form of autoscopy, although this term is more commonly used to refer to the pathological condition of seeing a second self, or doppelganger. The term out-of-body experience was introduced in 1943 by G. and M. Tyrrell in his book Apparitions. It was adopted by researchers such as Celia Green and Robert Monroe as an alternative to belief-centric labels such as astral projection or spirit walking. OBEs can be induced by traumatic brain injuries, sensory deprivation, near-death experiences, dissociative and psychedelic drugs, dehydration, sleep disorders, dreaming, and brain electrical stimulation, among other causes. Some can deliberately induce it. 1 in 10 people has an OBE once, or more commonly, several times in their life. Psychologists and neuroscientists regard OBEs as dissociative experiences occurring along different psychological and neurological factors. Sleep paralysis. Those experiencing OBEs sometimes report a preceding and initiating lucid dream state, among other types of immediate and spontaneous experience. In many cases, people who claim to have had an OBE report being on the verge of sleep or being already asleep shortly before the experience. Many of these cases refer to situations where the sleep was not particularly deep due to illness, noises in other rooms, emotional stress, exhaustion from overworking, frequent reawakening, etc. In most cases, subjects perceive themselves as awake. About half note a feeling of sleep paralysis. Near-death experiences. Another form of spontaneous OBE is the near-death experience, or NDE. Some subjects report having had an OBE during severe physical trauma, such as near drownings or significant surgery. Near-death experiences may include subjective impressions of being outside the physical body, visions of deceased relatives and religious figures, and transcendence of ego and spatiotemporal boundaries. Typically, the experience consists of such factors as a sense of being dead, a feeling of peace and painlessness, hearing of various non-physical sounds, an out-of-body experience, a tunnel experience like the sense of moving up or through a narrow passageway, encountering beings of light, and a godlike figure or similar entities, being given a life review, and a reluctance to return to life. Similar to an NDE, extreme physical effort during activities such as high-altitude climbing and marathon running can induce OBEs. A sense of bilocation may be experienced, with the ground and air-based perspectives being shared simultaneously. OBEs can be induced by hallucinogens such as psilocybin, ketamine, DMT, MDA, and LSD. Falling asleep physically without losing awareness. The mind awake, body asleep state is widely suggested as a cause of OBEs, voluntary and otherwise. Thomas Edison used this state to tackle problems while working on his inventions. He would rest a silver dollar on his head while sitting with a metal bucket in a chair. The coin would noisily fall into the bucket as he drifted off, restoring some of his alertness. OBE pioneer Sylvan Muldoon more simply used a form held perpendicular in bed as the falling object. Salvador Dali used a similar paranoid critical method to gain odd visions that inspired his paintings. Deliberately teetering between awake and asleep states is known to cause spontaneous trance episodes at the onset of sleep, which are ultimately helpful when attempting to induce an OBE by moving deeper and deeper into relaxation. One eventually encounters a slipping feeling if the mind is still alert. This slipping is reported to feel like leaving the physical body. Some consider progressive muscle relaxation as an active form of sensory deprivation. The types of visualizations vary. Some common analogies include climbing a rope to pull out of one's body, floating out of one's body, getting shot out of a cannon, and other similar approaches. This technique is considered complex to use for people who cannot properly relax. One example of such a technique is the famous Golden Dawn body of light technique. Brainwave synchronization via audio-visual stimulation. Binaural beats can induce specific brainwave frequencies, notably those predominant in various mind awake and body asleep states. Binaural induction of a body asleep, 4 Hz brainwave frequency was observed as effective by the Monroe Institute. Some authors consider binaural beats to be significantly supportive of OBE initiation when used in conjunction with other techniques. Simultaneous introduction of mind-awake, beta frequencies detectable in the brains of normal, relaxed awakened individuals was also observed as constructive. Another popular technology uses sinusoidal wave pulses to achieve similar results. The drumming accompanying Native American religious ceremonies is also believed to have heightened receptivity to other worlds through brainwave entrainment mechanisms. Sensory deprivation aims to induce intense disorientation by removing space and time references. Flotation tanks or pink noise played through headphones are often employed. In cognitive science and psychology, OBEs are dissociative experiences from different psychological and neurological factors. Scientists consider the OBE to be an experience from a mental state, like a dream or an altered state of consciousness, without recourse to the paranormal. Charles Richet held that OBEs are created by the subject's memory and imagination processes and are no different from dreams. James H. Hislop wrote that OBEs happen when the activity of the subconscious mind dramatizes specific images to give the impression the subject is in a different physical location. Eugene Osti considered OBEs to be nothing more than the product of imagination. Other early researchers, such as Schmening, supported psychophysiological theories. G. and M. Tyrrell interpreted OBEs as hallucinatory constructs relating to subconscious levels of personality. Donovan Rockcliffe connected the OBE experience with psychosis and hysteria. Other researchers have discussed the phenomena of the OBE in terms of body image distortion and depersonalization. The psychologists Nandor Fodor and Jan Ehrenwald proposed that an OBE is a defense mechanism designed to deal with the threat of death. Carl Sagan and Barbara Honegger wrote that the OBE experience might be based on a rebirth fantasy or reliving of the birth process, based on reports of tunnel-like passageways and a cord-like connection by some OBErs, which they compared to an umbilical cord. Susan Blackmore concluded that the OBE is a hallucinatory fantasy, as it has the characteristics of imaginary perceptions, perceptual distortions, and fantasy-like perceptions of the self, such as having no body. Ronald Siegel also wrote that OBEs are hallucinatory fantasies. Harvey Irwin presented a theory of the OBE involving attentional, cognitive processes, and bodily sensory activity. His theory involved a cognitive personality construct known as psychological absorption and gave instances of the classification of an OBE as examples of autoscopy, depersonalization, and mental dissociation. The psychophysiologist Stephen Laberge has written that the explanation for OBEs can be found in lucid dreaming. David Hufford linked the OBE experience with a phenomenon he described as a nightmare waking experience, a type of sleep paralysis. Other scientists have also linked OBEs to hypnagogia and sleep paralysis. In case studies, fantasy proneness is higher among OBErs than those who have not had an OBE. The data has shown a link between the OBE experience, in some cases, to fantasy-prone personality. In a case study involving 167 participants, the findings revealed that those who claimed to have experienced the OBE were more fantasy-prone, higher in their belief in the paranormal, and displayed greater somatoform dissociation. Research from studies has also suggested that OBEs are related to cognitive perceptual schizotypy. Terence Hines has written that spontaneous out-of-body experiences can be generated by artificial brain stimulation, which strongly suggests that the OBE experience is caused by temporary, minor brain malfunctions, not by the person's spirit actually leaving the body. A review of neurological and neurocognitive data revealed that OBEs are due to functional disintegration of lower-level multisensory processing and abnormal higher-level self-processing at the temporoparietal junction. Some scientists suspect that OBEs result from a mismatch between visual and tactile signals. Richard Weissman has noted that OBE research has focused on finding a psychological explanation, and out-of-body experiences are not paranormal and do not provide evidence for the soul. Instead, they reveal something far more remarkable about the everyday workings of your brain and body. A study by Jason Braithwaite and colleagues linked the OBE to neural instabilities in the brain's temporal lobes and to errors in the body's sense of itself. Braithwaite et al. Reported that the current and dominant view is that the OBE occurs due to a temporary disruption in multisensory integration processes. Paranormal. Writers in parapsychology and occultism have written that OBEs are not psychological and that a soul, spirit, or subtle body can detach itself out of the body and visit distant locations. In spiritualist literature, out-of-body experiences were known during the Victorian period as traveling clairvoyance. In old Indian scriptures, such a state of consciousness is also referred to as chariya, which can be achieved by deep yogic and meditative activities, during which a yogi may be liberated from the duality of mind and body, allowing them to intentionally leave the body and then return to it. The body carrying out this journey is called Vijjan Delhi. The psychical researcher Frederick Myers referred to the OBE as a psychical excursion. An early study that described alleged cases of OBEs was the 2-volume Phantasms of the Living, published in 1886 by the psychical researchers Edmund Gurney, Myers, and Frank Podmore. The scientific community criticized the book because the anecdotal reports in almost every case lacked evidential substantiation. The theosophist Arthur Powell was an early author to advocate the subtle body theory of OBEs. Sylvan Muldoon embraced the concept of an etheric body to explain the OBE experience. The psychical researcher Ernesto Bazzano also supported a similar view, describing the phenomena of the OBE experience in terms of bilocation, in which an etheric body can release itself from the physical body in rare circumstances. The subtle body theory was supported by occult writers such as Ralph Shirley, Benjamin Walker, and Douglas Baker. James Baker wrote that a mental body enters an inner cosmic region. During the OBE, Robert Krukol supported the subtle body theory of OBEs in several publications. The paranormal interpretation of OBEs has not been supported by all researchers within the study of parapsychology. Gardner Murphy wrote that OBEs are not very far from the known terrain of general psychology, which we are beginning to understand more and more without recourse to the paranormal. In the 1970s, Carles Osis conducted many OBE experiments with the psychic Alex Tannis. In one series of these experiments, he was asked whether he could identify colored targets placed in remote locations while in an OBE state. Osis reported 114 hits in 197 trials. However, the controls for the experiments have been criticized. According to Susan Blackmore, the final result was insignificant since 108 hits would have been expected by chance alone. Blackmore noted that the results provide no evidence for accurate perception in the OBE. In April 1977, a patient from Harborview Medical Center, known as Maria, claimed to have experienced an out-of-body experience. During her OBE, she claimed to have floated outside her body and outside the hospital. Maria later told her social worker, Kimberly Clark, that during the OBE, she had observed a tennis shoe on the third-floor window, ledge to the north side of the building. Clark then went to the north wing of the building and, looking out of the window, could see a tennis shoe on one of the ledges. Clark published the account in 1984. The story has since been used in many paranormal books as evidence that a spirit can leave the body. In 1996, Hayden Eburn, Sean Mulligan, and Barry Bearstein visited the medical center to investigate Clark's story. They placed a tennis shoe on the same ledge and found it visible from within the building, and could easily have been observed by a patient lying in bed. They also discovered that the tennis shoe was easy to observe from outside the building, and suggested that Maria may have overheard a comment about it during her 3 days in the hospital, and then incorporated it into her OBE. They concluded that Maria's story merely reveals the naivete and the power of wishful thinking from OBE researchers seeking a paranormal explanation. Clark did not publish the case description until 7 years after it happened, casting doubt on the story. Richard Weissman has said that although the story is not evidence of anything paranormal, it has been endlessly repeated by writers who either couldn't be bothered to check the facts or were unwilling to present their readers with the more skeptical side of the story. Clark responded to the accusations made in a separate paper, Neurology and OBE-like Experiences. Several possible physiological explanations for parts of the OBE-like experiences have been induced by brain stimulation. OBE-like expertise has also been influenced by a patient's stimulation of the posterior part of the right superior temporal gyrus. Positron emission tomography was also used in this study to identify brain regions affected by this stimulation. The term OBE-like is used above because the experiences described in these experiments either lacked some clarity or details of normal OBEs or were described by subjects who had never experienced an OBE before. Therefore, subjects were not qualified to make claims about the authenticity of the experimentally induced OBE. British psychologists Susan Blackmore and others suggest that an OBE begins when a person loses contact with sensory input from the body while remaining conscious. The person retains the illusion of having a body, but that perception is no longer derived from the senses. The perceived world may resemble the world they generally inhabit while awake, but this perception does not come from the senses either. The vivid body and earth are made by our brain's ability to create fully convincing realms, even without sensory information. This process is witnessed by each of us every night in our dreams, though OBEs is claimed to be far more vivid than even a lucid dream. Ehrman pointed out that OBEs appear to occur under very high or very low arousal conditions. For example, Green found that 3/4 of a group of 176 subjects reporting a single OBE were lying down at the time of the experience, and 12% considered they had been asleep when it started. By contrast, a substantial minority of her cases occurred under maximum arousals, such as a rock climbing fall, a traffic accident, or childbirth. McCreary has suggested that this paradox may be explained by the fact that sleep can ensue as a reaction to extreme stress or hyperarousal. He proposes that OBEs, relaxation, and hyperarousal conditions represent a form of waking dream, or the intrusion of stage 1 sleep processes into waking consciousness. Olaf Blank studies. Research by Olaf Blank in Switzerland found that it is possible to reliably elicit experiences somewhat similar to the OBE by stimulating brain regions called the right temporoparietal junction. Blank and his collaborators in Switzerland have explored the neural basis of OBEs by showing that they are reliably associated with lesions in the right TPJ region, and that they can be elicited with electrical stimulation region in a patient with epilepsy. These experiences may include perceptions of transformations of the patient's arms and legs and whole body displacements. Aysen study. In August 2007, Henrik Aysen, then at the Institute of Neurology at University College of London, published research in Science demonstrating the first experimental method that, according to the scientist's claims in the publication, induced an out-of-body experience in healthy participants. The experiment was conducted in the following way. The study participant sits in a chair wearing a pair of head-mounted video displays. These have 2 small screens over each eye, which show a live film recorded by 2 video cameras placed beside each other 2 meters behind the participant's head. The image from the left video camera is presented on the left eye display, and the image from the right camera is on the right eye display. The participant sees these as one stereoscopic image, so they see their own back displayed from the perspective of someone sitting behind them. The researcher then stands just beside the participant in their view and uses 2 plastic rods to simultaneously touch the participant's actual chest out of view and the chest of the illusory body, moving this second rod towards where the imaginary chest would be located, just below the camera's view. The participants confirmed that they had experienced sitting behind their physical body and looking at it from that location. Both critics and the experimenter himself note that the study fell short of replicating full-blown OBEs. As with previous experiments which induced sensations of floating outside of the body, Aysen's work does not explain how a brain malfunction might cause an OBE essentially. Aysen created an illusion that fits a definition of an OBE in which a person who is awake sees his or her body from a location outside the physical body. Awareness during resuscitation study. In 2001, Samparnia and colleagues investigated out-of-body claims by placing figures on suspended boards, facing the ceiling, not visible from the floor. Parnia wrote, "Anybody who claimed to have left their body and be near the ceiling during resuscitation attempts would be expected to identify those targets. If, however, such perceptions are psychological, then one would not expect the targets to be identified." The philosopher Keith Augustine, who examined Parnia's study, has written that all target identification experiments have produced negative results. Psychologist Chris French wrote regarding the study, "Unfortunately, and somewhat atypically, none of the survivors in this sample experienced an OBE. In the autumn of 2008, 25 UK and US hospitals began participation in a study coordinated by Sam Parnia and Southampton University, known as the AWARE study, Awareness During Resuscitation. Following on from the work of Pim van Lommel in the Netherlands, the study aims to examine near-death experiences in 1,500 cardiac arrest survivors and determine whether people without a heartbeat or brain activity can have documentable out-of-body experiences. As part of the study, Parnia and colleagues investigated out-of-body claims by using hidden targets placed on shelves that could only be seen from above. Parnia has written, "If no one sees the pictures, it shows these experiences are illusions or false memories." In 2014, Parnia issued a statement indicating that the project's first phase has been completed and the results are undergoing peer review for publication in a medical journal. No subjects saw the images mounted out of sight, according to Parnia's early report of the study results at an American Heart Association meeting in November 2013. Only 2 out of the 152 patients reported any visual experiences, and 1 described events that could be verified. The 2 NDEs occurred in an area where no visual targets had been placed. On October 6, 2014, the study's results were published in the journal Resuscitation. Less than 20% of cardiac arrest patients could be interviewed, as most died or were too sick even after successful resuscitation. Among those who reported a perception of awareness and completed further interviews, 46% experienced a broad range of mental recollections concerning death incompatible with the commonly used term of NDEs. These included frightening and persecutory experiences. Only 9% had experiences compatible with NDEs, and 2% exhibited full awareness compatible with OBEs with explicit recall of seeing and hearing events. 1 case was validated and timed using auditory stimuli during cardiac arrest. According to Caroline Watt, the 1 verifiable period of conscious awareness that Parnia was able to report did not relate to this objective test. Rather, it was a patient giving a supposedly accurate report of events during his resuscitation. He didn't identify the pictures. He described the defibrillator machine noise. But that's not very impressive since many people know what goes on in an emergency room setting from seeing recreations on television. However, he couldn't describe any hidden targets, as there were none in the room where his OBE occurred, and the rest of his description was also exact, including the description and later correct identification of a doctor who took part in his resuscitation. AWARE study, too, as of May 2016, a posting at the UK Clinical Trials Gateway website describes plans for AWARE 2, a 2-year multicenter observational study of 900 to 1,500 patients experiencing cardiac arrest, with subjects being recruited starting on August 1, 2014, and that the scheduled end date was May 31, 2017. The study was extended, continuing until 2020. Astral projection will continue to fascinate us as long as the possibilities remain endless. That's the beautiful thing about possibilities. It's up to us to live up to them. Until next time.